A young girl plummeted through an endless void with no end in sight. As her older brother looked on with a mixture of fear and hope, his voice rang out as he called her name as loudly as he could. Under his breath, he promised himself he would get to her soon, silently urging her to stay strong for just a bit more. The youth with striking violet eyes broke into a heavy sweat, his expression betraying both fatigue and rising fear. He found himself encircled by terrifying apparitions that lunged at him from every direction. Overwhelmed by intense fear, he felt a wave of regret wash over him, wishing he had never stopped to look back during that moment. A question lingered in his mind. If he had just kept running, would he have been able to reach her waiting hand? His train of thought came to an abrupt halt as voice cut in, firmly refusing him. It was already far too late to change anything. A shadowy apparition took shape in front of him, directing all the faults squarely at his feet. She accused him of causing all their troubles, insisting that his reckless choices in the past were the reason he now found himself trapped in such a miserable situation. The setting changed to a glowing woodland, where a woman appeared behind the boy, gently holding a little child's hand as they walked together. The young man watched as the elderly man, wincing from pain, let out a low groan that soon intensified into a piercing scream. An elderly man with fierce, crimson eyes charged at him, his voice filled with a bloodthirsty rage. The young man moved swiftly to the side, narrowly avoiding the wild assault from his frenzied opponent. The next moment, she struck the side of his neck with quick precision, making him cry out in agony. At that instant, the young man summoned a being known as, prompting a soft electronic chime to fill the air. A glowing, owl-shaped creature emerged, even as the man's cries echoed around them. His body collapsed to the floor, landing with a heavy thud. As anticipated, the young man realized the timing was still not right. Known as the Alchemist Eden, he started to clarify what was happening. Eden recounted that the individual, a collector of uncommon mushrooms, had fallen victim to a parasite attack. This particular parasite was the cause. Typically residing in marshy areas, the parasite manipulates its victim using a tail similar to a leech, making the host crave blood, and resulting in crimson eyes and sharp fangs. Eden comforted the woman, letting her know that the man would recover now that the creature had been removed from him. The woman expressed her gratitude to him and assured him that she would provide the promised reward without delay. Although Eden declined the offer at first, insisting that he didn't need anything, he admitted that he did have a single question he wanted to ask. Despite his hesitation, the woman firmly pressed him to accept the money, clarifying that the sum totaled precisely 10 million, which meant their debt to him would be fully settled. With hesitation, Eden accepted the weighty bag filled with money. She came to understand that her feelings toward him were far from positive. He estimated that the large amount of money found near Sporter could easily match what someone would earn in an entire year. Despite his hesitation, he determined to take the necessary action. Eden then inquired whether the woman was familiar with any previous occurrences like this one. For instance, she mentioned vampires as an example of a race. The moment the word vampire left his lips, Eden felt a sudden sting as something struck her neck. The woman became aware of her actions and felt a surge of surprise at what she had done. She internally acknowledged that her reaction, a sudden flinch, had happened automatically as soon as she heard the word. While Eden shook with pain, he looked at her with surprise and wondered aloud about the types of exercises she practiced. At that moment, a notification popped up announcing, Day 2601, Palm Strike, 296th repetition. He decided the situation was manageable and informed his young companion that they needed to reach another destination quickly. A short while later, he noticed a young boy in a vampire costume excitedly announcing his identity as a vampire. Eden comforted the elderly woman by letting her know that the young boy wasn't facing any additional issues. Eden clarified that the boy's behavior stemmed from his admiration for villains and gently advised him to exercise caution in the future. The woman tossed a small pouch onto the ground at his feet, explaining that it was the reward she had promised him. She stated firmly that, under the terms of this agreement, they would not acknowledge any assistance from him, and then checked whether he comprehended her words. He responded by lowering his head in silent agreement. The woman reprimanded Lucy, upset by his actions and his habit of pretending to be a vampire. She lamented that, due to these circumstances, she was unable to summon the knights and was instead forced to depend on untrustworthy individuals to fulfill her needs. Eden grinned, seizing the opportunity to question the woman once more, this time inquiring if she had ever come across any tales or gossip about vampires. He was struck by a powerful blow from the woman, which caused him to abruptly spit out blood. In that moment, a system notification flashed before his eyes, displaying, Day 2602 of Vampire Hunting, Fist Punch, 176th occurrence. The woman responded with intense fury, unable to believe that these betrayers had the audacity to even speak the word, vampires. She instructed Lucy to leave and loudly declared that all vampires needed to be wiped out. Eden questioned silently why people always responded so extremely. Unpleasant memories of how others had treated him surfaced. He recalled a time when someone had spat on his shoe. On a different occasion, some villagers menaced him by brandishing a shovel. The knights had pursued him simply because he had reported seeing vampires. Eden, drained of energy, pressed a hand to his chest as he came to the troubling realization that his strength was fading fast, and he couldn't endure much more if the situation didn't change. He felt frustrated by how everyone overreacted merely at the mention of the name, wishing they had taken the time to hear him out. He glanced at his small friend and comforted her with the promise that he had no plans to harm anyone. Without warning, a different boy with striking green hair arrived on the scene, wrapped in a warm embrace, and looked at Eden with a pointed reminder that he had always promised to stay by Eden's side, no matter what. Eden stared at him in astonishment, wondering aloud how he had managed to show up once more. Eden questioned in his mind how the boy had been able to trail him such a long distance from the village. The boy, brimming with confidence, explained that he was so familiar with the land surrounding his home that he could easily track Eden no matter where he tried to go. The boy lowered himself in a deep bow, pleading earnestly for acceptance as a disciple, and expressed his strong wish to follow in Eden's footsteps and become a legendary super alchemist. Eden felt confused about how the boy knew such things, but the boy revealed he had found the information in last month's issue of Alchemy magazine. That edition featured a special piece on Eden Isaac, highlighting him as one of the 5 elite super alchemists. Internally, Eden regretted ever agreeing to that magazine interview. Eden recalled that he had accepted the interview in hopes of receiving important details, but instead, he was only given advice about enhancing's complexion, leading him to privately label them as frauds. The boy persisted in begging, promising to fulfill any request if it meant he could become a disciple. Eden gave a firm refusal to his request, explaining that anyone wishing to become an alchemist needed to attend the Oracle Academy, located at the heart of the kingdom in order to study the fundamentals. The boy insisted that life required active participation, believing that by apprenticing under Eden, he could accelerate his learning and eventually develop a unique approach to alchemy. The boy claimed he had been prepared for quite a while, prompting Eden to take a seat beside him, and with a doubtful tone, questioned the extent of his knowledge about alchemy. The boy responded with assurance, stating that he had already grasped the fundamentals of alchemy and the basics of science through reading magazines. He had made sure to train himself, mastering simple martial arts and honing skills such as swiftly scaling trees. He explained that acquiring the ether, known as the foundation of alchemy, was the only thing he required to have faith in his ability to perform simple alchemical techniques. Eden found it remarkable that the boy understood the existence of the ether and expressed admiration for his knowledge. Eden acknowledged to herself that the boy's claim could be true, since ether served as the boundless and exclusive origin of all energy. Eden explained that they held the majority of the ether found across the continent, and hearing this made the boy feel a surge of excitement, convinced that his opportunity had finally arrived. Eden lifted a single finger to emphasize his point, making it clear that, naturally, there remained one significant issue. Eden clarified that the entire supply of ether was required to keep the city of alchemy suspended in the air, and it was also believed to be essential for preserving the acta. Consequently, alchemists are left without any ether at their disposal. Despite having a slightly deeper grasp of the world's rules and systems than most, they remain just as ordinary as anyone else. The boy, filled with disbelief, questioned Eden about how he was able to perform alchemy, convinced that such a thing could not be done. Eden explained that a contract had been formed. He clarified that they entered into this agreement, putting their lives on the line, in order to create a power matching the strength of ether. People understood that undiluted life energy was capable of generating energy similar to ether. Because of this, they must sacrifice their own lives whenever they practice alchemy, Because of this, alchemists earn substantial salaries, as their battles require them to risk their very souls. Eden explained that alchemists usually live much shorter lives than ordinary people, often only reaching half the typical human, and noted that early deaths are frequent within their ranks. They are assigned to distant locations to gain experience and discover new things, with the responsibility of completing tasks on a regular basis. He explained that such realities go beyond what any book could teach and questioned once more whether, knowing all this, he still desired to pursue the path of an alchemist. The boy immediately agreed, showing no signs of doubt. He was reminded that he had been the alchemist responsible for rescuing their village. He described how an illness had swept through their village, leaving people to waste away rapidly, and even though they begged others for assistance, every nearby village refused to offer aid. The knights assigned to defend the kingdom declined to offer assistance, arguing that the village's distant location made it unworthy of their effort. As despair settled over the villagers and hope seemed lost, an alchemist arrived unexpectedly, bringing a solution that saved them all. The boy confessed that the villagers had not offered their gratitude. Instead, they had tossed coins his way and demanded that he go. Despite this, he maintained that the experience held a different meaning for him. Eden reflected that no matter how much time passed, their act of betraying humanity would always remain unchanged. He started telling a tale from history, one the boy was likely familiar with from his reading. 2 centuries prior, vampires unleashed the most devastating conflict ever witnessed on the continent of Eden, known as the War of the Races. In only 7 days, 70% of the human population vanished, just as countless other species had. As desperation spread, people frantically sought help from alchemists, yet the alchemists turned them all away. They insisted that their work was unfinished. From above, they silently observed the terrifying events below, hoping along with the others that something miraculous would happen. Eden went on to explain that something miraculous had truly occurred. The kingdom discovered a mysterious force known as the Blessing of. With this newfound strength, the knights managed to overcome and vanquish the vampires. Tranquility once again settled over Eden. Even now, the townspeople continue to despise the alchemists who betrayed them. The boy cut him off, remarking that his little brother, who was only 4, was already familiar with that tale. He wished to discuss an event that had happened long ago, believing that now was the time for them to reconnect and resolve old differences. Without warning, Eden rose to his feet, catching the boy off guard with a sudden movement. She informed him that it was time for him to go, mentioning how much she had enjoyed their conversation after such a long while. Eden then smiled warmly at the boy, assuring him they would meet again soon in the... Several moments passed before a loud explosion echoed through the air, catching the boy's attention. Worry crept into his thoughts as he considered whether Eden had noticed the noise as well, realizing that something significant must have just occurred. At the same time, Eden was already gone. They noticed that the blast had originated from a particular area. He strongly suspected that a genuine vampire could be involved this time, since the details he possessed described a 2-legged being that killed its victims by draining their blood. After searching for so long, he wished that his efforts would at last be rewarded. He got ready to fight, calling on his ally and making sure his alchemical pistol was loaded and within reach. Eden hurried in the direction where the noise had come from. As he drew nearer, he realized the temperature around him was dropping in an unusual way. He came to an abrupt halt, stunned by the sight ahead. Strange monsters lay ripped apart, their remains scattered across the ground. Started producing a constant alarm, which caused Eden to suspect that another person might be nearby. Without warning, a massive serpent-shaped creature lunged at him, emerging from the icy ground. Eden was able to intercept the assault just in time. The character employed an alchemical power that caused time around them to move more slowly. Eden found herself puzzled by the presence of a blood snake in such an unexpected location. The creature was believed to exist solely within the boundaries of the desert. Even though he was confused about what was happening, he realized he couldn't let the chance to collect such a rare sample slip away. Feeling fortunate to have made this find, he raised his pistol and took aim. The character aimed carefully and pulled the trigger, sending a shot toward the creature. She did not expect to discover that someone else had survived. Eden understood that handling this situation was going to be troublesome. Suddenly, countless blood snakes surged toward him from every side, launching a fierce assault. He activated his mastery of alchemy, causing time around him to move at a sluggish pace. He activated the ability, targeting every snake in his vicinity. The blood snakes became motionless, completely paralyzed where they were. Eden observed that the large number of opponents allowed him greater freedom of movement. However, the moment had already slipped away beyond reach. He performed the phantom shot using his mastery of alchemical techniques. He discharged his weapon skyward, wiping out every snake in an instant. Reflecting on the situation, he realized that the stories circulating lately must have started because of these animals. Once the fighting ceased, he turned his attention to the wounded individual, carefully inspecting their injuries and anxiously trying to determine whether they had survived. While he was getting ready to offer the man some medicine, the man cut him off, insisting there was no point since he believed he would die soon regardless. Eden kept talking with the enigmatic stranger, soon realizing the man was another alchemist. The stranger wore a thick, frosty white coat, and his body showed signs of serious wounds. Eden noticed the instrument the other alchemist clutched, questioning inwardly whether it might be the legendary seal of life. The man, weakened and close to death, explained that the answer would become clear if he chose to open it. When Eden finally broke the seal, he explained that the object had once been owned by an alchemist from an earlier time, and revealed that he himself had outlived the moment of his own death. Alchemists relied on the seal of life as a crucial instrument, designed to curb careless alchemy by halting its timer whenever alchemy was performed. Once the permitted duration was surpassed, the seal shifted into a phase known as surpassing the hour of death, a pivotal moment marking the thin boundary between existence and the end of life. Upon examining the seal, Eden realized that the alchemist standing in front of him must have encountered a significant swarm of blood snakes. He realized the man was also a mid-tier alchemist, just like him, and that both of them were members of the Frost alchemy group known as Nyx. With great effort, the alchemist struggled to speak, addressing Eden by his complete name, Eden Isaac, and affirming that he was indeed the alchemist who commanded time. The man stood in awe as he witnessed Eden's alchemy firsthand, marveling at how the power to halt an adversary's time surpassed the very laws of nature. He shared that he finally realized the reason behind their title of super alchemists. He described the area as utter chaos, with the pursuing him so suddenly that he hadn't been able to verify his seal of life, which caused him to push his alchemy abilities too far. The man let out a heavy, regretful sigh, reflecting that his lifelong ambition, like that of all alchemists, had been to reach old age before death. Yet now, he faced the same fate as so many others in his field, meeting his end for the most typical reason. He admitted to himself that what consumed him was a hollow emptiness rather than true sorrow. They viewed life itself as nothing more than a resource, bound by the misfortune of their destiny. Eden wondered aloud whether he had any final requests. The man explained that he had no particular desire, since he had always accepted this destiny, though a sense of curiosity lingered within him. Eden was informed that he held a unique place among the others, marked as someone extraordinary. He sensed that his fate would not be the same as before. Just before he died, he drew his final breath. Following the man's passing, Eden observed an unusual blue butterfly fluttering nearby. All at once, he noticed someone clutching his hand tightly. The voice of the late alchemist resonated in his thoughts, urging him to pay close attention. A mysterious voice spoke to him about a shadowy forest lying beyond the western gate of, where sunlight never reached. Hidden in the heart of those dark woods, the voice claimed, a lost vampire was believed to rest in a deep slumber. Eden's voice rose in shock as confusion flooded his mind, trying to understand the sudden revelation and the overwhelming energy coursing through him. His voice echoed a warning, urging him to proceed with caution, because within those walls lurked a creature that had surpassed death itself. Once the voice and the swarm of blue butterflies disappeared, Eden called desperately for. He swiftly lifted her into his arms, convinced that pursuing the blue butterfly was necessary, as he suspected the strange occurrence was somehow linked to it. He soared upward, his eyes scanning the sky in pursuit of his target. They tried to figure out its location. After spending several hours searching without success, he finally collapsed into a seat, completely drained, his mind racing with questions about the missing item's whereabouts. Eden was sprawled on the ground, worn out from exhaustion, when informed him that she had already transmitted a fatal alert to ACTA, ensuring that Mr.'s situation would be handled. Despite her assurance, Eden refused to accept it, firmly stating in his mind that he would not submit any reports until the current mission reached its conclusion. He was certain that whoever possessed the blue butterfly had knowledge of where the vampire could be found. Even though it was a mystery to him how this person was aware of his quest to find vampires, he chose to rely on the information provided. He gazed at a photograph showing himself alongside a young girl, both standing within the boundaries of his life's seal. He suddenly understood that the task he had been seeking to complete for 7 long years could at last be within his grasp. In another place, unusual green butterflies floated in the air. A woman appeared, dressed in black attire. A man stood nearby, his voice echoing as he desperately called out for assistance. He silently promised himself to keep everything that occurred in this place, along with the real existence of vampires, a secret from everyone. He remained completely silent, refusing to speak at all. A strange voice suddenly instructed him to remain silent. The silence was so complete that his breathing made no sound at all. After she ended his life in a violent manner. Eden reached the woodland that matched the description had given. No light managed to enter the space, and it appeared precisely as it had been detailed. He sensed that he might have stumbled right into an ambush. He felt certain that a vampire lurked within, anticipating his arrival. Eden experienced a surge of excitement and energy, realizing that this was the first occasion he had ever received information under such unusual circumstances. He instructed to ignite a light, confidently claiming that if a vampire truly existed, facing such danger would be insignificant. Eden stepped into total darkness, her voice echoing as she tried to find out if someone else was present. He moved forward with careful steps, his voice echoing as he tried to get someone's attention. However, silence was the only response. He found the situation unusual. Even after an hour of wandering, the darkness still felt unfamiliar to him. There was no indication that any life remained. Without warning, he caught sight of a human foot darting past and called out too, eager to know if she had witnessed it as well. A short while afterward, he noticed an arm swiftly move past and raised his voice once more. Convinced that no one could possibly be in such a forest, he was startled when a voice unexpectedly declared that he had been caught. He spun around in shock and looked too, wondering if she had also heard the mysterious voice. He searched everywhere, anxiety growing as she remained out of sight, and his voice echoed with concern as he tried to figure out what was going on. Without warning, he sensed a presence drawing near from behind. He then heard an ominous voice declare that it had captured him as well, and commanded him to meet his end. As shadows closed in around him, Eden found himself under sudden assault. Relying on his mastery of alchemy, he halted the flow of time in an instant. The blade halted mere inches from his throat, narrowly avoiding contact. He began to question internally whether this was the reason that nobody had ever escaped the forest alive. He suddenly understood that the thing assaulting him was a corpse without a head. At first, he suspected the figure before him might be a ghoul. He understood how to handle revived corpses, so he prepared to cover its face with a cloth he had brought in his bag. The creature moved with surprising speed and strength, forcing Eden to barely avoid yet another strike. He quickly understood that he was facing something far more dangerous than an ordinary ghoul. The only thing that remained was a ghost, confined within these walls. He realized that if the body had contained a source of life, his time-based alchemy would have worked completely. Despite any attempts to disturb it, the phantom remained unmoved. This led Eden to reflect on how peculiar the forest truly was. The darkness was so complete that not a single ray of sunlight reached inside, and as he ran, he noticed he hadn't tripped over any rocks or trees along his path. He realized that the area had been deliberately built, and he began to question whether it was meant to safeguard something important. This matched the stories people had heard about a vampire sleeping somewhere close. Without warning, the phantom addressed him, questioning whether he, too, had come with the intention of hurting that individual. Eden activated his power, causing time around him to move at a slower pace. She wondered if the phantom was referring to a vampire. He calmly explained that his only intention was to meet the individual whom it was loyal to. The phantom bristled with anger, rejecting the request and demanding to know what gave Eden the right to interrupt his master's rest. He vowed that his demise would be harsher and more violent than any others. Eden clarified that, despite 2 centuries having gone by since the War of the Races. Despite the passage of time, vampires continued to inspire fear and unease among humans. Due to this ongoing threat, the Knights have continued their relentless pursuit, tracking down any vampires who had managed to escape. The Phantom announced that its curse upon humanity remained unbroken. He kept repeating that Lady Anne had never wished for the war to happen. However, fear gripped them more tightly than it did anyone around them. Despite her only crime being that she was a vampire, she still faced a cruel death. The Phantom claimed that every human was just another type of monster. Eden expressed remorse for his previous actions, admitting that the war had likely caused suffering among the vampires as well. He emphasized that his desire to meet the vampire went beyond simple curiosity, insisting this was his true reason for seeking the encounter. Eden proposed an arrangement to the Phantom, requesting that it allow him to meet its master, Lady Anne. He made it clear that he would happily sacrifice his own life if that was what it took. Eden cautioned the Phantom that the Knights were bound to discover this location and would mercilessly end Lady Anne's life while she slept. Despite the risks, he made a solemn vow to keep her safe, willing to sacrifice everything, even his own life, to fulfill that promise. He shared that this was a desire he had held onto for a long time. The Phantom wondered about Eden's determination and questioned what made him so ready to endanger his own life. Eden explained that his younger brother had been taken by an alchemist following a devastating accident. He went on to clarify that the alchemist in question was called Ivan. Eden had experimented with forbidden alchemy, driven by a desire to attain godhood. Reflecting on that time, he acknowledged his own weakness and inability to take action. However, circumstances were different now. Eden intended to acquire the blood of a vampire, believing that this would grant him an everlasting body and allow him to surpass the boundaries set by alchemy. Armed with this newfound ability, he intended to rescue his brother and set out on a ruthless path of vengeance, making Lady Anne essential to his plans. The Phantom observed that Eden's quest for vengeance had clouded her judgment. Despite everything, it found itself admiring the strength of his resolve and the certainty with which he pursued his goals. It chose to offer him an opportunity to demonstrate his determination. Materialized within the grasp of the Phantom, Eden had once learned from someone that the companion he held dear, almost like a member of his own family. He was required to take a life using a knife. Should he choose this path, he might finally have the opportunity to encounter the woman. A short while later, Eden showed up with blood on their hands, having just stabbed. Taking this as evidence of Eden's sincerity, the Phantom realized that Eden was being truthful and insisted on being granted the meeting with Lady Anne as originally agreed. He informed him that Lady Anne could be found by taking a trail through the woods. Without warning, darted through the air in Eden's direction, emitting a sharp noise as she moved. Eden wrapped his arms around her, offering comfort and letting her know that things were safe once more. The Phantom was left bewildered, trying to understand how she had managed to return from the dead after suffering a knife wound. Eden clarified that both his companion and aide had been brought to life by alchemical means. Though she was capable of being harmed or even killed, she possessed the extraordinary ability to revive herself immediately. Eden declared that he had kept his word and was now preparing to visit Lady Anne. The Phantom's anger flared as it became convinced that Eden had deceived it. Determined to have revenge, it swore to rip Eden to pieces and end his life in a violent manner. Eden responded with composure, assuring the being that misleading it had never been his intention. Eden observed that he wasn't the only one affected by the urgency of the situation. He realized that the Phantom had spared his life when it could have ended it easily, revealing that the creature still held onto some feelings for its mistress and wanted to protect her. Ultimately, Eden requested that the Phantom allow him to take on the responsibility of rescuing its ailing mistress. The Phantom recognized that Eden had anticipated this moment every bit as eagerly as it had. From the very start, Eden had grasped the whole truth, a fact that soon became clear to it. Within its mind, the Phantom expressed regret to its mistress. Although Eden had been deceptive, it found itself unable to suppress a faint sense of hope. There was a lingering wish that things might change for the better this time. Eden followed the glowing walkway that the Phantom had revealed to him. After touching down in an area blanketed with blooming flowers. After a long search, he at last discovered the very thing he had been seeking. he noticed a woman resting beneath the shade of a sprawling tree. The thought struck them with disbelief as they questioned whether this could be the very beast that had devastated the region 2 centuries earlier. Eden realized that the woman had been wounded by a knife. A spear lodged deep in her chest. She became aware that it carried the power of a force so strong that it prevented her, despite her vampiric abilities, from healing. Eden's strength left him all at once, and he collapsed onto his knees. He admitted that he had lost concentration and apologized, explaining that he no longer had any feeling in his body. He felt a sense of relief and joy now that they had located her, knowing this step would help him draw nearer to. Eden's thoughts drifted back to long ago, recalling how he and his sister once prepared a secret birthday celebration for a girl called Mary. His sister saw straight through his intentions, easily reading them from the clear expressions on his face. She warned him that behaving like this would surely lead to his secret being discovered. She made him put on a fake smile, insisting it would help him avoid suspicion. In the present moment, Eden forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Was greeted with a cheerful inquiry about whether he finally felt at ease. Eden gazed at Lady Anne as she slept, questioning whether her features truly belonged to someone from 2 centuries past. It looked nothing like what he had pictured in his mind. To him, she appeared that way. The individual appeared just like anyone else, blending in with the crowd without drawing any attention. Eden made up his mind to uncover the truth as soon as he roused her from sleep. She reached down and wrenched the spear out of her own chest, where it had been lodged. He retrieved a small container that held a pair of gleaming crimson pills. She clarified that the essence of alchemy allowed for the creation of just 2 blood-life flowers each year. He recalled being told to use it at the moment when Mary neared death, with blood pouring from her as if from a broken dam. Eden noticed that the circumstances reminded him of what happened with Mary, although the emotions involved were not the same. He pulled the spear out of Lady Anne's chest, then gently pressed a blood-life flower pill into the gash, silently wishing for it to take effect. Before the girl regained consciousness, he secured her wrists and ankles with sturdy ropes. Within a short span, Lady Anne slowly returned to awareness. At first, she was puzzled by unfamiliar noises around her and questioned the presence of others nearby. As Eden hurried over, concern filled her face while she checked if the girl was all right, noticing that the girl was just beginning to fully regain consciousness. Lady Anne slowly opened her eyes as awareness returned to her. She tried to figure out her location. The thought crossed his mind, wondering whether she might still be among the living. She had a hazy recollection of fleeing a certain place, and was startled to discover ropes binding her tightly. Eden comforted her, his relief evident as he explained how glad he was to see that she was safe. He admitted he had been anxious when she didn't reply for an entire hour. He revealed a startling fact to her: 2 centuries had already gone by. Eden recounted how the war of the races had concluded with humans emerging triumphant, and she speculated that she must have dozed off in this place during her attempt to get away. He explained to himself that restraining her with ropes was necessary for his own safety, believing that with only one life to protect, he couldn't afford to take any chances. He attempted to calm her fears by promising he would not act in any unusual way. Seizing the moment, Lady Anne lashed out at him with fury. Eden swiftly lowered herself, narrowly evading the oncoming strike. The woman wondered aloud about what he had done to her. The character made a solemn promise to end his life. She warned him that she would drain every drop of blood from his body, leaving him utterly empty. Eden responded to her warning with a calm remark, revealing his satisfaction at having his suspicions about her being a vampire confirmed, yet he quickly understood that overcoming her would not be simple. Lady Anne lunged at him, her voice rising in a furious scream as she demanded his death. Eden activated his slow time power, causing her to become completely motionless. He approached her with a calm demeanor, expressing his awareness of her anger and confessing that he understood it stemmed from their history. She rejected his offer with anger, accusing him of being full of himself. She wondered how he had the nerve to command her. Eden informed her with a hint of sorrow that her efforts would not succeed. Afterward, he presented himself with formality, revealing his name as Eden Isaac and identifying himself as the alchemist who controlled time. He revealed to her that he possessed the power to manipulate time. As long as there is still a spark of life within a body, he has the ability to slow time's passage for anything. He went on to explain that if the intended victim was just one individual rather than a group, that person would be rendered completely immobile, unable to even move a single strand of hair. He teased her about the way she stood frozen, remarking that her defensive stance looked amusing to him. Lady Anne glared at Eden, her voice sharp as she insisted on being set free at once, while she pressed him to reveal his intentions. Eden responded with composure, acknowledging that she was ready to speak at last, and proposed that they address the main issue without delay. Eden revealed his determination to locate his younger sister, who had been abducted 8 years earlier, and acknowledged that obtaining vampire blood was essential for his quest. Lady Anne's eyes widened in astonishment as she questioned whether his intentions were to serve as a blood servant. Eden nodded in agreement, elaborating that while alchemy granted humans extraordinary abilities to exceed their natural boundaries, the artifact gradually wears down the life force of the person who uses it, imposing a tangible constraint. He had learned that a blood servant might receive vampire blood and achieve immortality. Eden expressed his determination to surpass his current strength. Eden believed this ability was essential and desperately needed in his situation. He then presented Lady Anne with a proposition. He recalled for her how, even though humans had won the War of the Races 2 centuries earlier, the knights remained relentless in their pursuit to eliminate any vampires who had survived. Eden made a solemn promise to keep her safe. In exchange, he would receive her blood and finally achieve his goal of becoming the blood servant he desired to be. Both sides believed these conditions would be beneficial to everyone involved. Lady Anne reflected on her circumstances, coming to the startling realization that she had awakened to a world where the war had ended in defeat and 2 centuries had slipped by. She believed this was the most dreadful outcome imaginable. As she attempted to shift, Eden calmly pointed out the hopelessness of her efforts, emphasizing that time remained unchangeable. Lady Anne consented to what he asked, urging him to let her go as soon as possible. Eden let go of her at once, causing her to collapse onto the floor. Eden glanced over with concern, wondering if she was all right. After being released, Lady Anne remarked on the intriguing nature of Eden's alchemy, yet she still regarded him as nothing more than a frail human. She questioned his audacity in suggesting an agreement to her. He clarified that the role of blood servant was meant only for the most powerful warriors, making it far out of reach for someone like him who hoped to secure it to help his sister. She pointed out that, because he had no intention of ending her life, there was no reason for either of them to expend any further effort. She expressed her gratitude for his help, yet decided their paths should now separate and offered him a final goodbye. Eden, feeling desperate, blocked her path and held out the alchemy magazine for her to see. Only the most powerful alchemists made their presence known there. The character emphasized that the interview was a rare opportunity, one that was not available to just anyone. He believed that his effort had not succeeded. Lady Anne let out a weary sigh, while Eden realized silently that everything was becoming more tangled, and he felt certain that his end was near. He questioned his next move, weighing the idea of initiating a prolonged fight by employing alchemy right away. Eden contemplated whether he ought to strike Lady Anne and take her captive. She caught him off guard when she mentioned that he ought to have shared that information with her earlier. She confidently proclaimed that he surpassed all others in strength, insisting that no one else could serve as a better blood servant, and affirmed that he met every requirement for the role. Eden responded with cheerful approval, acknowledging her wise decision and recognizing that his exceptional talent was unmatched by anyone else. He considered privately how unexpectedly gullible she seemed, realizing this scheme was turning out to be the simplest con he had ever pulled. Eden, filled with anticipation, wondered aloud whether the bite would happen right away, confessing that he still needed time to steel himself. Lady Anne's response revealed her astonishment. She revealed that she had realized his true strength, though he had not yet demonstrated it. She informed him that he had merely met the minimum requirements. If he could demonstrate his strength from that moment forward, she would formally grant him the status of her blood servant. The woman questioned Eden, wondering whether he had naively assumed he would instantly be accepted as one of their own. At that moment, Eden understood that he had fallen victim to a lie. Although initially stunned, Eden quickly regained his composure and agreed to take on the challenge. Eden felt certain that everything unfolding had been part of her strategy all along. He was convinced that she had carefully planned everything solely to take revenge on him. He inquired about Lady Anne's preferred way for him to demonstrate his strength. Lady Anne paused abruptly, curiosity sparking in her eyes as she questioned how the stranger was aware of her name. A sudden realization washed over her, leading her to silently puzzle over how he could have discovered her secret identity as a vampire. Eden explained that he had learned this information from one of the maids assigned to guard her. He revealed that he was unaware of her appearance since she had no head, yet it appeared she had been guarding this location for many years. Lady Anne grew more bewildered as she tried to understand which headless maid he referred to. Without warning, she sensed an odd sensation wash over her, causing her concentration to slip away. A shadowy and malevolent presence surfaced within her thoughts, relentlessly echoing the command to erase. The mysterious being started to wipe away her memories, using a giant paintbrush as its tool. The creature persisted in wiping away her memories, removing them piece by piece. Every memory she possessed clung to the wall, while the creature relentlessly wiped them away with its brush. At that moment, the creature noticed Lady Anne's gaze fixed upon it, and shifted its attention in her direction. The creature's lips curled into a menacing grin as it uttered a single chilling word: erase. A short time passed before Lady Anne pressed her hands to her temples, wincing from a sudden ache. She explained to Eden that her memory was blank and wanted to know what had occurred. Noticing her confusion, Eden grew worried, sensing that something was amiss. Lady Anne attempted to comfort Eden, insisting that there was nothing wrong with her. He reached out and took hold of her arm, his expression filled with doubt as he questioned her well-being. Without warning, her demeanor shifted, and she began to behave in an unusual way. Her appearance shifted unexpectedly, leaving both of them puzzled. She cried out, making it clear to everyone that she was far from fine. Eden did not expect this abrupt shift and felt a wave of surprise. Lady Anne suddenly became a young child. Eden understood that the vampire had been hiding behind a false appearance. He had merely learned of it through stories shared by others. Lady Anne shouted at him, insisting that such a power was impossible. Lady Anne's patience wore thin as exhaustion swept over her, leaving her utterly depleted. At that moment, it became clear to them that the tale of 2 centuries slipping by was indeed the truth. Eden requested that she measure her height, noting that she only came up to around his chest. In a burst of anger, she sank her teeth into him. She yelled, insisting that he review her posture once more. Eden's voice rose in a panicked scream as he demanded to know what she was up to. Unbothered by his reaction, she answered with calm surprise at his alarm, assuring him that everything would be all right, and that becoming her blood servant would quickly set him right. Eden insisted that she turn him into her blood servant right away. However, she declined, explaining that she couldn't entrust him with such a responsibility. Eden cried out in pain, demanding to know what had happened to his broken arm. She coldly responded, blaming his injury on his own human frailty rather than taking responsibility herself. Eden retorted with a sarcastic remark, accusing her of hiding behind her 2 centuries of age as justification. Annoyed, she commanded him to stop talking and hurriedly inform her of how much she had increased in size. Eden remarked that it was clear she remained exactly the same as before. She remained skeptical, but her doubts were interrupted when a tall, muscular man abruptly blocked her path. It appeared as if Eden's hands were gently resting on the shoulders of a young child. Eden gazed down at the crimson smeared across his lips, convinced that he had let himself down once again. The furious man raised his voice at Eden, accusing him of being dishonest. The man quickly expressed his regret, admitting that he had wrongly assumed Eden was abducting a child and recognized the seriousness of his error. Eden responded calmly, assuring everyone that everything was fine. He attributed the incident to sheer misfortune, explaining that his cousin had consumed some wild berries and then began acting mischievous. Lady Anne assured the man that an apology was unnecessary, explaining that Eden's actions had appeared questionable. However, she suggested that the man could have chosen gentler language. Meanwhile, Eden considered that he might need to resort to violence against the vampire. Eden seethed with frustration, convinced that the precious blood flower had been squandered. He believed that not even the black market would have any left, and he felt certain that his fate was sealed once Mary discovered the truth. The man inquired whether Eden was the alchemist, prompting Eden to introduce himself. Upon hearing this, the man turned to Eden and requested her assistance. The man came to an abrupt halt as a piercing scream echoed through the air. As the man requested a favor from Eden, a recognizable voice interrupted, calling out's name. The man hurried in the direction of the noise, heading straight for a small hut close by. As soon as they reached their destination, he spotted the elderly woman, his grandmother, as she slipped an unusual green object into her mouth. As chastised her grandmother, she reminded her sternly of the countless times she had warned her not to put unfamiliar objects in her mouth, worried that something might bite her. The grandmother's eyes filled with tears as she claimed that never allowed her to do anything and was always unkind. Through her sobs, she insisted that give back whatever she had taken from her. Upon spotting Lady Anne, the grandmother hurried over to greet her without hesitation. As soon as she arrived, she wrapped her arms around the other girl in a warm embrace, eager to show how deeply she had missed her. The grandmother remarked that small size and adorable appearance made her especially dear to her heart. Lady Anne grew uneasy in the situation and attempted to distance herself from the grandmother. The grandfather welcomed everyone into the house for a conversation, even as Lady Anne shouted threats against Eden from the background. Within the house, Eden listened, as the grandfather revealed that the grandmother had mysteriously become a little girl. He mentioned that she was no longer able to recall what her family looked like. He described the grandmother as once being firm, quick-minded, and always attentive to everything around her. One day, her memory began to slip away, leaving her as innocent and unaware as a young child. Eden realized that the grandfather's request was for her to use alchemy to help the grandmother. His eyes widened in surprise as she came to understand that the man before her practiced alchemy. She quickly explained that they had nothing to offer him, pleading with him to eat what little they had and then go on his way. Eden comforted her, explaining that she didn't need to be concerned, since he couldn't possibly walk away after being asked to share a meal. He realized it had been ages since anyone had greeted him with such kindness. The old man reassured him, insisting that he shouldn't dwell on the past, and explained that having visitors come all the way out to their secluded home was something to be grateful for. Eden realized he needed to work to deserve his food. He requested that fetch a book for him, and in response, a mystical book materialized right in front of him. Eden clarified that while his expertise in alchemy was not particularly effective for healing, he was familiar with an excellent cure. He flipped through the pages of the book, his eyes scanning each one, until he finally discovered the image he had been looking for, a silver thorn tree growing upside down. He reached into the pages of the book and drew out a piece of fruit that had come from the tree. She explained that it helped refresh the mind and suggested that the grandmother would benefit from eating it after her meal. The grandmother quickly grabbed the fruit and ate it right away, which caused to reprimand her once more. Afterward, Eden's grandfather inquired about what Eden intended to do next. He responded by saying he planned to visit the neighboring village to pick up a few supplies. His grandfather observed her unusually bright mood and suspected it was due to the presence of their visitor. Eden's grandfather advised him to spend the night, explaining that the bridge to the city was being fixed and travel would be much easier for Eden in the morning. After pausing to consider the situation, Eden acknowledged the suggestion, realizing that both he and Lady Anne would require fresh outfits regardless. Eden observed that Anne behaved with a surprising willingness, far exceeding his initial assumption that she would react with irritation. Anne, however, cautioned him against assuming she was a kind person. She made it clear that any inappropriate behavior from him would result in his immediate expulsion. She also warned that her caution applied to every human present, assuring them all that she was keeping a close eye on everyone. Eden felt a surge of irritation at the remark and silently insulted her as a foolish vampire in his thoughts. Following that, requested Eden's assistance with folding the laundry, and he accepted right away without hesitation. Wondered aloud whether he had ever tried washing clothes by hand. He assured her that he had, pointing out that when he wasn't using alchemy, he was just as ordinary as anyone else. As they washed the clothes together, Eden remarked on the pleasant weather, believing it would help the laundry dry quickly. Without warning, a clump of mud struck squarely in the face. Without warning, the grandmother extended an invitation for her to join a playful battle in the mud. A wave of intense revulsion swept over them. She erupted in fury, loudly declaring her intent to destroy every one of them. The grandmother darted off, her laughter echoing behind her. In another location, A pair of observers kept their eyes on Eden, and the vampire accompanying him after successfully tracking them down. There was uncertainty about whether the other person would actually show up, especially since Ivan, their leader, had not given any instructions to do so. The other person expressed a desire to discover the truth on his own. Ivan's reasons for selecting him became clear. He wanted to witness just how extraordinary the boy truly was. As dusk settled over the town, Eden gently draped a blanket around the grandmother's shoulders to shield her from the growing chill. Eden observed her sleeping, and found it remarkable how she appeared just like any ordinary human, showing no noticeable differences. Afterward, once had taken time to unwind with a soothing bath. She turned to, curious to know if she had also enjoyed the experience. Meanwhile, expressed regret to Eden for her tardiness and inquired if she had missed anything important. Eden replied with a calm reassurance that nothing was amiss. Eden wondered if Anne had experienced anything unusual. He hadn't expected her response and sensed a dangerous, almost lethal aura radiating from her. She thought back to the time when she had relaxed in the bath, feeling content. Expressed her regret for the grandmother's actions, urging her to be understanding since the woman was unwell, and added that her grandfather was genuinely fond of her. Wrapped her arms around Anne in a firm embrace, while Anne struggled to break free from her grasp. Anne felt a surge of anger in response. Realizing her mistake, offered an apology and tried to clarify that her actions were simply a result of being overly affectionate. Following the lively and noisy bath, Lady Anne resolved that she would always bathe alone from that moment forward. Handed her a glass of milk, hoping it would help soothe her nerves. He explained to her that the main purpose of bathing was because of milk. Anne remained seated, her mind clouded by uncertainty. Although humans stood before her, she realized that no anger stirred within her. This absence of emotion made her question whether she might be experiencing amnesia. She found the situation extremely irritating, yet she felt uncertain about how to handle it. Anne felt a wave of surprise as she noticed that all eyes in the room were fixed on her with curious and puzzled expressions. Without warning, Anne's grandmother opened her eyes and noticed that Anne was holding a glass of milk. The grandmother quickly took the glass of milk out of Anne's hands, insisting that it belonged to her. Reprimanded her once more, reminding her that the cup was meant for Anne. In an attempt to ease the tension, Eden lightheartedly remarked that the milk appeared to be just right for Anne. Just then, a gentle tapping sounded at the door. Explained to the others that her grandfather had arrived, as she had requested he pick some vegetables from the garden for them. As she moved to answer the door, Eden stepped forward and offered to open it in her place. As the door swung open, he greeted the other person with a warm welcome. Eden was abruptly overcome by a sense of looming danger. A mysterious figure emerged from behind the door, sending a flurry of enigmatic soap bubbles floating into the air. He listened as the grandfather's caution drifted in from outside, advising him to stay away from the bubble. Eden reached out and made contact with it. The girl standing outside commanded the bubble to pop. A huge blast erupted, tearing through the house and demolishing a section of it. In the midst of the disorder, Anne tried to make sense of the situation, uncertain about what had just occurred. The grandfather was found sprawled on the ground outside, his body stained with blood. The unusual girl remained standing just beyond the doorway. The character found themselves questioning the whereabouts of Eden Isaac. Eden floated high above the ground, facing a girl whose striking white hair and violet eyes stood out against the sky. Without warning, she launched bursts of energy at him, initiating their clash. Bullets struck the enemy from behind. Eden released the very person who had enabled him to soar through the air. The character collapsed onto the ground. He relied on the triple point shot. He brought the confrontation to a close by leveling his pistol at his adversary. Eden demanded to know who the assailant was and why they had targeted him. The assailant recognized Eden's firearm as the formidable weapon once wielded by the famed Sage Grace, immediately sensing the grave threat it posed. Eden quickly understood that the adversary had no intention of answering his inquiries, prompting him to fire a shot directly at their head. Once Eden confirmed the enemy no longer posed a threat, she turned her attention to the grandfather to see how he was doing. Close to the ruined home, Eden let out a terrified scream when she caught sight of her wounded grandfather. He expressed regret for his tardiness and promptly started attending to the grandfather's needs. The elderly man expressed his gratitude to him for keeping their family safe. In the alternate realm, the assailant drove a blade into Eden's chest. As Eden plummeted downward, he called out desperately for, his gaze blazing with anger. The attacker made it clear through her warning that there were things she truly despised. Those who cause trouble and disrupt order. Eden collapsed onto the floor as blood seeped from her wounds. He questioned how he could possibly have survived, even after such a significant loss of blood. Eden questioned in her mind what sort of creature could suddenly emerge from emptiness like this. He focused solely on rescuing the grandfather as fast as possible. Just before everything went black, a blue butterfly appeared in his fading vision. He suddenly understood that the person who controlled the butterfly was also the one who had come to his aid. The search for the vampire began. The grandfather raised his voice, declaring his determination to keep the attacker away from his loved ones. The assailant who controlled Bubbles made her presence known as she strode forward, enclosing the grandfather inside one of her shimmering bubbles. The group watched as a mysterious girl walked toward them and revealed news about the dream's release. The moment she spoke, the bubbles surrounding the grandfather burst apart in a powerful explosion. Amid the chaos, the girl emerged with a serene expression. Terrified screams filled the air when she witnessed her grandfather's death. Collapsed onto the floor, observed that behavior seemed unusual. He struck her across the face, hoping the sharp sting would jolt her back to awareness. At that instant, Anne noticed a girl with white hair standing just behind her. She remarked that Eden remained unimpressive and frail, believing her time had been squandered. The girl remarked on Eden Isaac's total lack of usefulness. Anne's temper flared. She demanded to know what gave the other person the right to treat her that way. The girl activated her dream release ability, causing a shimmering bubble to materialize and gently envelop Anne's head. Just then, the grandmother stepped in and raised her voice at the girl, demanding to know why she would harm a child. The aggressor finally let go, releasing their hold on the victim. The elderly woman positioned herself fearlessly before Anne, convinced in her heart that Anne was truly her granddaughter. She silently promised herself that if the attacker so much as harmed a single strand of her hair, she would pursue them relentlessly, even into the deepest depths of hell. Anne was caught off guard by the turn of events, her mind racing with questions about the grandmother's condition and the abrupt clarity she now displayed. The assailant gently lifted the pot off her head, showing no sign of distress. Eden seized the moment to strike, delivering injuries to that would prove deadly. Eden realized that he had at last discovered who the blue butterfly belonged to. He also had numerous inquiries he wished to direct toward him. The attacker dismissed Eden's actions with a mocking sneer, clearly believing that Eden's efforts were a waste of time. Eden remained composed as he explained to her that everything would make sense in time. He clarified that the bullet had been covered in the venom of a blood snake. He would soon be consumed by such unbearable agony that he would long for death to end his suffering. The girl confessed that the sting of the venom caused her considerable irritation and discomfort. Eden stared in disbelief, unable to hide her astonishment. He realized she remained strong, despite expecting the venom to have drained her strength. The girl's frustration grew even stronger as she glared at Eden, upset that he had interrupted her once again. At the same time, she surrounded the whole house with a massive bubble. The character initiated the dream release, which triggered an enormous burst of purple energy. All that was left where the house once stood was Eden. The enigmatic girl emerged and signaled to her companion, urging him to reveal himself now that everything had come to an end. She questioned her companion about his reluctance to step forward and confront what was happening, but he explained that he chose to stay in the background and observe instead. Beside the girl, a dark silhouette began to emerge from the earth. Suddenly, a man stood in front of them. The character observed that the plan had not worked out, just as they had anticipated. Those who labeled themselves as super alchemists were, in reality, no different from regular alchemists. Eden regained consciousness, his body aching from serious wounds, and saw the attackers looming over him. Struggling to speak, he pleaded for answers, wanting to know who they were and the reason behind their actions. Upon spotting those who confronted him, Eden questioned inwardly whether these figures could be the infamous Red Hollow he had previously only heard whispers about. The assailants identified themselves as members of Lord Ivan's household. The first man stated that he was known as the Seventh and was called Blade, who also went by the nickname Black Dog. He then presented the girl as the second, introducing her as whose nickname was the Reverse Dream. Blade greeted Eden Isaac with a calm and collected demeanor. Eden came to the understanding that the visitors belonged to Ivan's family. He hurried over to them with a sense of urgency, driven by desperation. Someone inquired about the whereabouts of Ivan. Blade responded with an understanding of Eden's urgency, yet made it clear that he and his group were also pressed for time. He explained that their actions were a response to the boy's lack of progress, then instructed him to wake up. They chose to walk away, believing Eden no longer served any purpose. They decided to abandon him, believing he was useless to their plans and confident they could succeed without him. Eden stood her ground, making it clear that she would not allow anyone to go. He stood frozen, overwhelmed by disbelief, and delivered a sharp slap to his cheek, jolting him awake. He looked around with a troubled expression, and, his frustration evident, demanded to know what was wrong and why Ivan's family was nowhere to be seen. Explained to him that they had vanished a long time ago. Wrapped her arms around him in a warm embrace. Eden expressed his regret for causing her concern and showed his gratitude, mentioning that he was feeling better. He then inquired about how Anne had managed to stay alive. She explained that was the reason. Someone possessed 100 times more usefulness than he did. Had placed them inside its mouth and managed to escape from the bubble just before it burst. Anne pointed out that their current issue centered around the grandfather. He had given up his own life so that they could be safe. He had planned to meet his end, alongside them within the confines of the bubble. However, in the end, his selfless act lost its significance. At that instant, Eden pulled out a small gadget. A distress signal was transmitted to ACTA. Eden informed that assistance from an alchemist was on the way. Questioned within herself what purpose that served. Eden felt a heavy weight of guilt, believing he had failed in his duty to keep them safe. Eden took a seat next to, who was in tears, and expressed regret for what had happened. He held himself responsible for the loss of her grandfather. His own frailty had kept him from being able to defend him. Wept, overwhelmed by the sorrow of losing her grandfather. Eden's sense of shame grew intense as he recognized how powerless he had become. 3 days had passed when events unfolded in the village of. Eden lay in bed, gradually regaining her strength. Anne approached him with anger, her expression clearly showing her frustration as she challenged him. She insisted on uncovering the real story behind the events that had occurred. Eden tried to figure out what this could possibly mean. Anne wanted to know in what way he held the title of the world's strongest alchemist. No one had expected that those individuals would manage to overpower them with such ease. Eden did not expect that question and felt a wave of surprise. He struggled to keep his composure, yet he recognized that this was a chance he absolutely had to seize. Eden replied by questioning why she, despite claiming to be the most powerful among her people, had been powerless during the assault. She saw this as an ideal chance to demonstrate how honorable and distinguished vampires could be. His cheeks grew warm and her thoughts stumbled, caught off guard by the unexpected reply. She lashed out at Eden, striking him as her voice rose in furious shouts, outraged that he would speak to her with such disrespect. Eden chose to share his knowledge with her, recognizing that they were both facing the same circumstances. He clarified that the people they encountered were devoted to Ivan and introduced themselves as his family members. He explained that, despite previous rumors suggesting he was assembling supporters, this was the first occasion they had truly shown themselves. This signaled that something was surely on the verge of starting. Anne found herself curious about Ivan's character, pondering what sort of man he must be to attract followers like those around him. Eden explained that Ivan stood out as an extraordinary alchemist, recognized as one of the 4 legendary sages hailed as the finest alchemists in all of Acta. Eden also mentioned that Ivan, like himself, was a primeval alchemist. Eden clarified that primeval alchemists were individuals gifted with the very first powers of alchemy. The 5 blessings consisted of memory, creation, time, destruction, and space. The primeval god bestowed this gift upon humankind. He explained that the ancient alchemists were responsible for ensuring these blessings would endure through time. He disclosed that Ivan's unique form of alchemy allowed him to create things. This form of alchemy, considered the riskiest of all because it allows for the creation of living beings rather than simple objects, was the very taboo Ivan was attempting to defy. Eden believed that the act of defying the gods needed to be halted before it could reach its conclusion, and he considered this a key motivation behind his relentless chase after Ivan. Anne offered a biting summary of the situation, noting with irony that he was an ancient alchemist as well, yet his lack of strength left even Ivan's supporters uncertain about how to handle him. Eden's temper flared as he questioned internally why everything he said seemed to be misunderstood in this way. Anne paid no attention to him, and confidently announced that her loyal blood servant was undefeated. She made it clear that she would no longer accept him, lowering his head in submission. Eden managed a strained smile, inwardly noting that her real personality always surfaced whenever she lost her temper. Eden's companion indicated it was time to steer the conversation in a new direction. Eden came up with the idea that they should head out and shop for some new clothes for Anne. She hadn't expected Eden to propose a spontaneous shopping trip for new clothes, catching her completely off guard. His excitement was obvious as she urged him to move faster, her impatience clear in the way she questioned his actions. After finishing her shopping, she stepped outside dressed in a brand-new black dress, her face glowing with happiness. The customer expressed gratitude to the shopkeeper for his assistance before leaving. Eden observed that elegant clothing could make a person feel as if they could soar, and she felt confident that she looked quite good herself. While they continued along their path, Eden sensed a wave of disorder in the air. She chose not to respond, and instead proposed that they quickly find something tasty to eat. Without warning, they saw a huge group of people rushing along the street. News of the full moon circus's arrival spread quickly as a voice called out to the crowd. Hearing this, Eden's excitement grew, and she pleaded with Anne for a chance to see the show, promising it would only be this one time. Eden grabbed Anne's hand and excitedly pointed out that the full moon circus had just been announced, the very performance he had been eager to watch. Eden assured her that her experience there would be enjoyable. Although Eden hesitated, she ultimately consented to leave in a hurry. Surrounded by a sea of people, Anne found herself puzzled by the excitement surrounding the circus. Eden shared that circuses are known for their dazzling performances filled with incredible feats, and mentioned that the full moon circus, in particular, was rumored to be so extraordinary that it could even be compared to the wonders of alchemy. As the performances started, Anne initially appeared uninterested. She wanted to improve her vision. Eden gently picked her up and set her atop his shoulders. The ringmaster greeted everyone in the crowd with a grand gesture. Dressed in a clown costume, he floated high above the ground. The crowd gazed up in amazement, trying to figure out how he managed to soar through the air, and quickly dismissed the idea that he was using alchemy. The clown introduced the opening performance, which he called Paper Waves. He lifted his wand and started to move it through the air. The clown flung vibrant paper pieces skyward, drawing everyone's attention to the arrival of the paper bear. He went on to announce that the full moon circus was scheduled to put on a show at Square, beginning at 8 in the evening. He swept his cloak through the air, without warning the circus mascots, and appeared before everyone. With great excitement, the host encouraged as many people as possible from the audience to attend. The plan was to attend an outstanding performance later that night. Once the promotional event concluded, Eden turned to Anne, eager to hear her thoughts. Anne was reminded of her earlier claim that she wouldn't enjoy it. Although a flicker of curiosity appeared on her face, she quickly masked any sign of interest. She insisted that such things were meant for kids, which left Eden taken aback when she declined to attend the night show. Anne gently pointed out that their main objective was to help her recover her memory as soon as they could, not to enjoy the circus. Eden's expression revealed his astonishment at the reference to memory, yet before he could respond, Anne smoothly steered the discussion in a new direction, signaling that she considered the previous topic finished. She then inquired about the tasty meal he had talked about before. At the same time, the clown's eyes caught sight of Anne, standing quietly behind everyone else. From far away, the clown tried to get her attention, yet his words never reached her ears. Eden informed Anne that the clown was summoning her. The clown raised his voice, his words echoing as he called out to her, addressing her as Little One. Found herself irritated whenever she heard that name. Without warning, the clown darted forward with astonishing quickness. With an agility that normal limits, The character soared upward in a powerful leap. In an instant, he appeared just behind her, moving so swiftly it was almost impossible to see. His incredible speed took both Anne and Eden by surprise. Anne confronted him with a sharp tone, demanding to know his purpose and referring to him as a human. The clown paid no attention to what she had asked and moved closer to her. Someone admired how striking her red eyes appeared when viewed from a short distance. The clown's unbroken gaze remained fixed on Anne, causing her irritation to steadily grow. He proceeded to extend a formal invitation to her, asking if she would join him at the show scheduled for 8 that evening. Anne calmly refused his offer, explaining that she had no interest and would much prefer to enjoy a tasty meal instead. After a brief pause, the clown considered the situation. She proceeded to propose a different deal to her. He pulled out several tickets and explained that he planned to invite everyone in her family. He claimed that because of her, the entire audience was in for a fantastic performance. Anne, taken aback by his actions, questioned his intentions and wondered what scheme he was up to. He responded confidently, insisting that she would never be able to fool him. Anne, irritated by the clown's remarks about her family, insisted that he leave immediately and not remain in her presence. She responded curtly, making it clear to him that she was alone and had no family. Without warning, an unsettling vision enveloped her mind. In this vision, she stood within a shadowy room where fragments of her past were displayed on the walls like framed photographs. She felt a surge of surprise. A tiny, sinister creature used its brush to wipe away the images. In the midst of the turmoil, a vivid memory stood out, an image of a woman who looked like her, embracing a glowing teddy bear doll. Without warning, the doll emerged from within the painting. In the vision, a figure took shape in front of Anne. The doll hurried over to Anne and wrapped its arms around her in an embrace. The image mirrored itself within her gaze. Anne quietly murmured the name Isabel. Eden observed the abrupt shift in her demeanor and puzzled over what could be causing it. He hadn't witnessed anything unusual himself, but her actions had started to trouble him. Without warning, Anne seized Eden's hand and insisted they needed to leave right away, her voice filled with urgency. Eden was led along by her, his curiosity evident as he wondered aloud about their destination. Without hesitation, she assured him that they were headed home. A sudden recollection surfaced in Anne's mind, and she conveyed this to Eden. At that moment, she became aware that an unknown force was intentionally wiping away her memories. Concern filled her mind as she questioned the reasons behind the situation. She wondered about the secrets that were being kept from her. At the same time, the clown felt disappointed because his efforts to persuade Anne had failed. He spoke with another performer from the circus, sharing how disappointed he felt about not being able to see a particular person in the crowd. Quickly shook his head when his coworker brought up the Alchemist, insisting that wasn't who he meant. He gestured to make it clear he was referring to the girl, someone who looked like they had seen her before. Sometime afterward, at the train station, Eden realized that he hadn't traveled on a surface train since he had said goodbye to Mary. He told Anne that they traveled by train since her home, as she had described it, was situated on the edge of the kingdom. Eden observed that Anne was glancing about, her face marked by an unusual look. He teased her by suggesting that trains hadn't been around 2 centuries earlier, so riding one must feel like a novel adventure for her. Anne, however, firmly rejected the accusation, her frustration clear in her tone. She firmly claimed that, back in her time, superior and more marvelous modes of transportation existed, such as the baggage carrier, the legendary fire nut capable of shifting 2 mountains, and magical pumpkin carriage. Eden kept joking with Anne about the outdated ways people used to travel, all the while secretly questioning whether those methods truly surpassed the efficiency of today's trains. However, insisted that he required further instruction on the subject. She delivered a swift punch to his face. The ticket inspector approached and cut their conversation short, requesting to check their tickets. Eden handed over the tickets, struggling to keep his emotions in check. The inspector, raising his voice so everyone could hear, pointed out that the tickets were only valid for 1 adult and 1 child. This revelation caused Anne's face to flush with clear irritation. Once Eden had taken a seat, he looked at Anne with a thoughtful expression and questioned whether their trip to her former palace was truly just to retrieve her blood servant. Anne nodded in agreement, leaving Eden astonished, as he had believed he was the sole blood servant she possessed. Anne clarified that every noble vampire relies on a blood servant as a vital part of their existence. She explained that she possessed another blood servant, a remarkable fighter by the name of, whom she considered the most powerful among them all, and cautioned Eden that he ought to feel anxious about their upcoming encounter, since her higher status could make it difficult for him to even meet her gaze. Eden cut her off, reminding her that the palace, their intended destination, had actually been destroyed by fire 2 centuries earlier. The kingdom's knights had taken control of the site, overseeing its operations. This meant that could not have possibly survived. Anne forcefully dismissed his statement, her unwavering conviction clear as she asserted that remained alive. She rested her hand gently against her chest. She sensed, as mistress, that continued to hold on and wait for her. He cautioned him to put an end to this foolish behavior. Just then, rays of sunlight streamed into the train. The sunlight proved irritating to Anne. Eden observed the situation and wondered aloud how she managed to remain unharmed in the sunlight, since he understood that vampires were usually vulnerable to it. Anne offered a mocking grin, as she clarified that such a minor issue concerned only those pitiable vampires who possessed pure blood. Sunlight posed no challenge for her, thanks to her noble half-blood heritage. Eden felt a surge of disbelief as the truth came to light, her mind racing with questions about whether hybrid vampires could truly exist. He realized that their sole focus was on keeping their bloodline untainted. Chose not to respond to his inquiry, acting as if she hadn't heard him at all. She declared her hunger and suggested that they find something to eat together. Eden reached out in an attempt to halt her departure, intent on receiving a response, but she walked away, leaving him standing by himself. Eden let out a sigh, quietly complaining to herself about how impolite she found the other person's behavior. She started to question whether her small height was because she was a half-blood. He experienced a throbbing headache as he tried to process all the mysteries hidden within the vampire world. At a different moment, Anne found herself lost in thought, questioning whether she had made the right choice in selecting that person. Anne turned to Eden, wondering aloud whether that arrangement would work for him. Eden quickly put her at ease by explaining that this was actually the second reason. His determination pushes him to keep going, even when faced with the toughest obstacles. He confidently announced that it was time to begin, and sat on the train with an impressive pile of sweets before her, focusing intently as she enjoyed each bite. Eden looked at her with wide-eyed surprise, wondering aloud if she was really able to finish all the food in front of her. She nodded confidently, explaining that this was actually a smaller portion than what she typically brought. She imagined that, if she wished, she could cover every seat and corner of the train car with candies and treats, since her hunger knew no bounds. Eden observed the wild glint in her eyes, recalling how much she loved sweets, while lounged contentedly in a bowl nearby, appearing completely satisfied. Eden remarked that, given additional time, he would have made more purchases. With a playful tone, he questioned whether she planned to eat and teased that he could finish her portion if she was not interested. Her temper flared, and she shouted furiously at him, warning him to keep his hands away from her meal. Anne reached out and seized Eden's collar with sudden force, catching the other passengers off guard. Eden, his body shaking, attempted to calm fears by showing that he was all right and capable of dealing with what was happening. He quickly fell to the ground in an exaggerated manner, boldly insisting that he had no regrets and that a mere stomach ache was a small price to pay for enjoying sweets. Anne stared at him with contempt before turning to, questioning whether this fool behaved like this all the time. After reaching their destination, the group found themselves wandering through a dense forest. Eden grew frustrated, pointing out that they had been trekking for 2 hours without encountering anything of interest, and wondered aloud about the distance left to travel. Admitted that she was just as unfamiliar with the route as anyone else. He grew increasingly frustrated, puzzled by her apparent inability to find her own house. Eden kept muttering complaints about how the entire journey had been made just for her benefit. Eden quietly admitted to herself that she wished she had mentioned that to him earlier. Without warning, Anne struck the man with force and shouted at him, blaming him for going against the wishes of his mistress. Eden let out a painful cry, prompting Anne to abruptly halt as she became aware of how delicate his condition was. Eden desperately called out to, pleading for assistance. Within moments, they reached their destination, with Anne and both appearing utterly worn out. Evidently, had transported Anne at an incredible pace. Anne stood before the charred remains of a once-standing structure, its ruins telling the story of a devastating fire. Without warning, a pair of knights emerged and demanded to know who they were. The knights informed the group that they had entered territory claimed by the Kingdom of, and insisted they leave immediately unless they possessed official authorization. She hinted that the person lagging behind would show up shortly. Just then, Eden arrived, and mentioned that he and had resolved an issue in the forest close by. Anne's frustration flared at the sight of him, prompting her to yell for him to keep his distance, firmly reminding him that she had instructed him to remain 50 paces behind her. Eden moved forward, prompting the knights to their swords, and announced that their presence was authorized by the Special Investigation Team. Eden remained composed as he instructed the knights to put down their swords, stating that, as part of the Special Investigation Team, he needed to verify something. He recounted that following the War of the Races, their group had been established and granted permission to conduct investigations wherever necessary, in order to keep watch over any unidentified creatures. He explained that stood as a leading illustration of such unity. Following his statement, he revealed a card displaying the emblem that represented his position. The knight captain studied the badge carefully, verifying its authenticity, yet curiosity lingered in his mind as he questioned the reason for their presence in such an isolated, crumbling place. Without warning, he noticed the name Eden Isaac printed on the card, and a wave of astonishment washed over him. He suddenly understood that he stood before the renowned super alchemist. Just then, additional knights appeared on the scene, and their commander quickly identified Eden, expressing excitement as he questioned whether Eden was truly the renowned alchemist of time, Eden Isaac. Eden who he was, prompting the knight to show great respect. The knight went on to tell Anne, who was clearly surprised, that Eden held a special place of honor among the archer knights. He mentioned his long-held dream of becoming an alchemist, expressing admiration for Eden's unusual talents, which impressed him even more because they were both around the same age. Eden's satisfaction grew after receiving the compliment, but Anne clearly found it upsetting. The knight shifted his focus to Anne, his curiosity piqued by the young girl at his side and the importance of confirming who she was. Eden informed the knight that Anne was actually his cousin. A sudden memory came to Anne, reminding her that Eden had once cautioned her to act like his cousin, and to steer clear of anything that might draw unwanted attention. If the knights learned that she was a vampire, it would spell doom for them both. Anne, however, stood her ground and rejected his plea, firmly insisting that she would follow her own wishes. Returning to the present moment, Eden, with a hint of uncertainty, explained to the knight that her circumstances were not simple, yet she was now his responsibility. The knight nodded in agreement, allowing the group to explore the ancient ruins. Without warning, Anne dashed toward the ruins, calling out for everyone to follow her. Eden nervously chuckled as he offered an apology to the knights, explaining that his cousin tended to be overly energetic. He quickly followed her, grumbling under his breath about how he had already cautioned her against acting alone. Eden noticed her gazing in confusion at a sturdy stone wall that blocked her path. Eden observed the area and noted that she couldn't see any clear way inside. Anne, her voice edged with frustration, remained firm in her belief that a hidden passageway led beneath the ground exactly where she stood. She found herself curious about the person responsible for sealing it. Eden noticed her assured demeanor and began to suspect that the doorway could be concealed. He chose to make use of a present that had been given to him by a person called Charlotte. He retrieved a small vial and tipped it over, releasing a liquid that quickly transformed into a blue, gelatinous creature. Eden referred to the creature as Baby Sticky and requested that it reveal anything concealed on the wall. The creature stretched out its limbs, unveiling an enchanted symbol that concealed the doorway. Eden became aware that the doorway had been carefully concealed by someone using secretive magic. Once the slippery creature exposed the hidden doorway, a shadowy corridor appeared. Without hesitation, Anne hurried in, her excitement clear in every step. Eden attempted to hold her back, raising his voice to insist that they should enter as a pair, and let everyone know that she would be there soon. She had vanished into the shadows before anyone could react. Eden quickly instructed to pursue her without delay. Beneath the surface, guided Anne along the shadowy passageway, eventually arriving at a chamber sealed in ice. In the center of the room, a teddy bear dressed in a pink hood rested atop the bed. Anne walked over to the doll, expressing regret for her tardiness and wondering if the doll had been kept waiting for a long time. The name was then given to it. Eden entered just then, completely taken aback by what she saw. They stared in astonishment, struggling to accept that this teddy bear might actually be the blood servant Anne had mentioned. Anne paid him no attention and dashed forward, embracing the doll with overwhelming happiness. Once Anne finished, she carefully pierced her finger and let a drop of her blood fall onto the doll. With a hint of sarcasm, someone questioned what the issue could possibly be, just as Eden prepared to point out how ridiculous it was for a teddy bear to serve as a blood servant. However, before Eden could finish speaking, an intense force suddenly surged through him, sending him flying backward. The doll started to change shape, gradually becoming a pale-haired young girl with uncovered ears. Tears streamed down her face as she questioned whether this strange sight was only a dream. Anne offered a gentle smile, letting her know that everything was genuine and that she had fulfilled her vow to return for her. Once more, the character expressed regret for not arriving on time. Isabel let out a joyful scream as she embraced Lady Anne in a tight hug. She conveyed just how deeply she had missed her, revealing that she had been looking forward to this day with great anticipation. She explained that the spot where she had spent the night felt gloomy and frightening. She had spent countless years by herself, surrounded by complete and utter darkness. Anne gently placed her hand on the girl's head, offering comfort as she promised that all her worries were over and that nothing would ever come between them again. Eden stood quietly, unable to hide her astonishment as she witnessed the doll change into a real person before her eyes. He carefully examined the circumstances and realized that a blood contract might influence objects that were not alive. Along with discovering that Anne was a half-blood, these revelations provided him with a wealth of unfamiliar knowledge. Became aware that someone else was there, and her face shifted in an instant. In a flash, her arm morphed, taking the shape of a gleaming, lethal blade. She positioned herself between Anne and Eden, aiming the blade toward his throat as she demanded to know his identity. She cautioned him, making it clear that he was not permitted to lay a hand on Lady Anne. He realized that his only chance of survival depended on leaving right away. Anne quickly stepped in and commanded to cease her actions. She clarified that Eden was a potential blood servant whom she had personally invited, emphasizing that he was both capable and had willingly chosen to assist her. Isabel's eyes widened in astonishment as she came to the realization that the Yellow Monkey, a nickname she had given him, had now become her very first underling. She proceeded to announce her name to Eden, addressing him with a superior attitude as she emphasized her higher status and insisted that he had much to learn from her experience. Eden, feeling unsure, gave his name to, without wasting any time, kicked off his training by insisting that the top rule was to always respond using the word grrrrr. Eden couldn't help but think that this whole experience was going to be incredibly tiring. Isabel took a seat beside Anne, her face revealing the disbelief and sorrow she felt about the events that had unfolded while she was unconscious. She realized that 2 centuries had gone by, their side had been defeated, and her mistress had transformed back into a young child. Although she had endured so much, seeing Anne alive filled her with happiness. She embraced her warmly, expressing that it was her first time seeing her as a child, and remarking on how adorable she looked. Anne seized the moment to question Isabel about her memories, hoping she could recall familiar faces or past experiences. Isabel admitted her memory was unclear since she had been asleep for most of the time, but she recalled that Anne had often appeared tired in the past. She mentioned with certainty that Molly was still clear in her memory. Anne felt a jolt of surprise at hearing the unfamiliar name and wanted to know the identity of the person being mentioned. Felt a wave of shock wash over her as she struggled to recall the woman before her. It seemed impossible to forget someone so important, especially since Molly had been the sole human servant Anne had ever trusted. Anne found herself shocked at the realization that she had placed her trust in a human. At the same time, Eden questioned internally whether this servant. It was that very headless servant who once guarded the forest. He made up his mind to reveal everything, too. She revealed that her memories were gone. She suspected that someone had interfered with her memories, since many of them seemed hazy or had vanished altogether. She clarified that her lateness in locating her was due to this particular reason. Before she could continue, Eden, visibly upset, cut into the conversation and demanded to know why she had kept such a significant detail from him until now. Since their partnership depended on mutual trust and the open exchange of information, both parties had to rely on one another. He emphasized that, above all else, trust mattered most when it came to the bond shared between two individuals. Anne responded with a cutting remark, questioning what would make him think she'd share something like that with him. He responded by questioning who else she could rely on if not him. She told him he should appreciate finally being informed. Stepped into the quarrel, chastising Eden and referring to her as the yellow monkey for failing to display appropriate manners. She was punished for having the audacity to respond to her mistress with such bold defiance. Suddenly, without any sign, she struck him with a forceful punch. The darkness beyond shuddered with a fierce vibration, leaving those outside to question whether an earthquake was unfolding. Eden realized he had barely escaped with his life, and understood that failing to evade the attack would have meant certain death. Isabel let out a light laugh as she expressed her apology. She explained that her strength had become difficult to manage after so much time had gone by. Anne's lips curled into a wicked smile, while she took pleasure in watching the events unfold before her. The figure commanded Eden to get down on his knees, declaring that this was where he truly belonged. A sense of hopelessness washed over Eden as he remembered that he was completely alone in this place, and he regretted not considering his decision more carefully before arriving. Without warning, the pair of knights stationed outside stepped into the room. Anne raised her voice prompting to growl in response before vanishing from sight. The knights, their faces etched with concern, turned to Eden and anxiously checked if he was unharmed after sensing the powerful tremor. Eden calmed the knights by explaining that everything was all right, insisting that the incident was merely a minor error made while looking into the matter. The knight captain found himself astonished by the sheer strength Eden displayed, marveling at how such a powerful force could result from a simple error. Eden urged Anne to depart immediately, noting that the atmosphere brimmed with a sense of foreboding. Anne showed no hesitation and quickly gave her consent. Before Eden departed, the knights expressed their gratitude for all he had done. Outside, Eden found herself curious about what secrets the cellar might be hiding. Anne admitted her uncertainty, suggesting that perhaps someone had once lived there, but now only abandoned ruins were left behind. Anne informed Eden about a fresh ambition she hoped to pursue. She declared with excitement her intention to build a family of her own, one that would become so strong and influential that nothing could tear it apart. Eden looked at her with genuine respect, clearly impressed by the boldness of her idea. However, a sudden realization dawned on him. Anne remarked that with Isabel's return, anything could happen. Eden began to question Isabel's whereabouts, puzzled by her sudden and unexplained absence. Eden's mind filled with anxiety, as she realized Anne had vanished without any explanation. Beyond the cellar, a knight emerged, a sword driven through his body. Isabel stepped forward, standing face-to-face with a gathered group of knights. She explained to the other that her actions were simply her way of following her mistress's instructions. They considered themselves unfortunate to have been assigned to watch over this location. She brought the final night to a close. In an instant, every one of them had been wiped out. After the conflict ended, felt a surge of happiness, believing her task was finished. Eager to return to her mistress Anne, she looked forward to earning her approval. Meanwhile, Eden and Anne sat together, as Anne reassured Eden with a gentle voice that was expected to return shortly. She had given her a straightforward task to complete. Eden realized he often found himself overthinking and letting worries consume his mind. They imagined the possibilities that might unfold if were to lose her way. Anne offered him comfort, insisting that such a thing could never happen. Their bond ran too deep, no matter what darkness she might face, Anne believed would always find her. She went on to express her concern about not knowing when they could visit that cellar again, believing this was the main issue at hand. Following an exhausting trip, Anne and Eden arrived at their intended location, where Anne let out an irritated sigh. Eden gestured toward the window, signaling for her to glance outside. They found themselves facing an enormous, awe-inspiring wall. Eden revealed that this structure was known as the Wailing Wall, renowned as the most formidable stronghold ever constructed by humans. This gate marked the western entrance to the kingdom of. He mentioned that this was the sole wall to remain standing after the war between the races. Anne gazed up at the imposing fortress, quietly expressing her frustration over how humans were capable of constructing something so impenetrable. After Eden noticed that she had viewed the wall to her satisfaction, she urged her to move on quickly. As Eden walked in, the guards acknowledged her presence with respectful gestures. A wave of pride washed over him, prompting him to drape his arm around Anne. She held, who had taken the shape of a doll, and her face showed clear irritation. They traveled by carriage to enter, and Anne expressed her frustration about having to use it once more. Eden described how reaching the center of the western gate required traveling a great distance, which made Anne curious about how large the lands inhabited by humans truly were. Eden then revealed that, since the War of the Races, their territory had expanded to 4 times its previous size. This revelation left Anne stunned and unable to hide her surprise. Eden conveyed that the triumph of mankind in the war, an event that seemed almost impossible. The surprising turn of events resulted in the rise of a kingdom that was both larger and more thriving than any that had come before. Humanity had entered an era brighter and more prosperous than any before, experiencing what many considered to be its finest golden age. Eden turned to Anne, seeking her thoughts on how far humanity had come. Upon arriving at the center, they immediately noticed how remarkable the progress was. She felt a profound sense of admiration, and silently questioned how humans had achieved such remarkable progress. Anne's thoughts turned to her latest goals. Now that she had brought back, she believed she could build the most powerful family imaginable. Being the most powerful would make her the ultimate leader, allowing her to claim everything as her own. Eden observed that she seemed distracted, so he broke her train of thought by reminding her they needed to make a stop before continuing. He cautioned her that the place might not be to her liking. She requested that the woman remain calm. Upon reaching their destination at last, Anne's sour expression confirmed Eden's suspicion about her foul mood. At the headquarters where the Archer Knights were based, Anne told Eden that the reason was unimportant. Despite her memory loss, she had never imagined that she would eventually find herself at the headquarters of the Order's Knights. Anne cast a resentful glance at the looming building, yet having by her side gave her confidence. Suddenly, she recognized a golden chance in front of her. This place served as the heart of the kingdom's vital information network, and if she combined her abilities with the secrets held here, her dream of creating the most powerful family could be realized in no time. Eden hinted that an even greater surprise awaited her, once she discovered the identity of the person they were about to meet. He rapped on the door, letting those inside know that they had arrived to see both the deputy commander of the Archer Knights and the individual asserting to be Supernatural Beauty's CEO. Following Eden's declaration that they had arrived, a woman with pink hair who had fallen asleep at her desk suddenly stirred awake. Believing the commander had shown up, she insisted that she hadn't dozed off but was simply meditating. The woman suddenly recognized the visitor as Eden and found herself curious about his long absence. Without warning, she became aware of Anne nearby and thought of her as an adorable young girl. Her office looked as if a storm had swept through, leaving everything in utter disarray. The woman gestured for Eden and Anne to have a seat, yet the clutter crowding the room left nowhere for them to settle down. Eden let out a deep sigh, his mind swirling with thoughts about how each visit to her seemed to become more difficult than the last. The woman justified the clutter, insisting that each item had its own unique place and order. The woman stated that her name was Deputy Commander. The observer noted that Anne, who was Eden's cousin, appeared to be roughly the same age as. Hearing the name sparked Anne's interest as she paused her meal. Found it unexpected that Anne was unfamiliar with. Questioned Eden about the situation, but he avoided giving a clear answer, simply stating that Anne was a far-off family member and implying there was no reason to bring it up, particularly with the recent troubling news concerning. Remarked that he could have informed her, considering he had dedicated his entire life to searching for his sister. Despite his frail condition, the fact that he remained alive seemed nothing short of miraculous. Eden quickly shifted the conversation, clarifying that he had a different purpose for his visit. The person inquired about the circulating stories concerning the emergence of the Red Hollow. He had come across whispers suggesting that numerous alchemists were present in the region. Just then, a man sporting sunglasses stepped inside, curious if the voice he had just heard belonged to Isaac. Greeted the newcomer warmly, and the man introduced himself as Deputy Commander Hughes. Hughes greeted Eden warmly, observing that this occasion marked their initial meeting in person. Eden teased Hughes by pretending to wonder if the glasses actually helped him see, but Hughes explaining that he wore them only to make things more dramatic. He then assumed Eden's visit was related to that particular issue. Without warning, Hughes sensed a menacing energy radiating from Anne. He became aware that an unbelievable event was unfolding. He concluded that eliminating this danger right away was necessary. Hughes moved with lightning speed, striking at Anne with lethal intent. In an instant, Eden materialized, intercepted the strike, and rescued Anne from danger. His thoughts burned with anger as she questioned Hughes's motives for lashing out at a child. Hughes glanced over at Anne with a mocking expression, questioning whether she was behaving like a little kid. Eden positioned himself between Anne and the threat, determined to shield her from harm. He cautioned Hughes that he would let the incident slide for now, but insisted that Hughes sheath his sword at once and explain the situation. He mentioned that should he unsheath his sword against his honored guest once more without just cause. He was ready to fire the gun instantly, showing no sign of doubt. Stepped in with visible frustration. Hughes was told without delay that he must offer an apology. She shoved his head down with firm pressure. Hughes immediately began to beg for forgiveness, confessing that he had done something unforgivable. He promised her that he would go to any lengths to calm her fury, expressing concern for her well-being and swearing to repay her 100 times over for any harm she had suffered. Anne cast a contemptuous glance in his direction, silently labeling him as nothing more than a foolish scoundrel among humans. She informed him that his good fortune lay in her immense capacity for mercy. Eden stood motionless, unable to utter a word as they observed what was unfolding before them. Eden experienced a sense of relief as he witnessed Anne directing her torment toward someone else instead of him. Chastised Hughes, perplexed by his claim that someone as adorable as the young girl could emit such a threatening presence. Hughes confessed that he had been wrong to his sword, not recognizing that she was only a child. He repeated his apology once more. He leaned closer to, and quietly assured her that his instincts about the looming threat were correct. Eden considered what was happening, fully aware that although Hughes was blind, his senses were unusually acute. He came to the realization that Hughes had failed to recognize the threat posed by Anne, whose abilities had diminished significantly. Instead, it was the menacing energy radiating from, now appearing as a doll. He understood that Hughes would have no way to identify where the threat was coming from, since the idea of a teddy bear holding such overwhelming power was simply unimaginable. Eden concluded that it was best for them to depart without delay. Shifting the conversation back to the important matter, he inquired about the significant explosion that had happened 1 week earlier. Clarified that the Archer Knights firmly believed the Red Hollow was to blame, and they had already asked for assistance. She explained that the assault seemed intentional and blatant, almost as though those responsible wanted everyone to notice. Shared accounts from witnesses, describing how several people had noticed an unusual figure dressed in a lengthy black cloak shortly before the explosion occurred. Thick patches of black fur began to emerge from beneath his cloak, just before the entire building erupted in a violent explosion. She based on several witness accounts that the unique characteristic of the terrorists had been consistently identified. There was a petal shaped like a star marking the back of his hand. Eden recognized the symbol and identified it as the mark belonging to the Red Hollow. Nodded in agreement, explaining that they had quickly reached out for assistance, yet no response had come, a situation she considered quite unusual. Hughes turned to Eden and wondered aloud whether the stories he'd previously heard, about the Red Hollow being connected to Ivan, remained true. Eden rejected this idea, clarifying that although he initially shared the same opinion, the present situation showed that they were operating entirely on their own. After Hughes paused in quiet contemplation, he stated that his tasks were complete and prepared to depart, offering a farewell to Eden. At that moment, quickly rose from her seat, protesting against his abrupt exit. The observation was made that Hughes tended to speak his mind openly before walking away without further discussion. Eden informed her that it was time for them to go, catching off guard. She expressed her astonishment, reminding him that since it had been so long since they last met, they should at least share a meal before parting ways. Eden offered an apology, explaining that Anne, his cousin, tended to be extremely reserved whenever she met new people. Once the others had gone, Tang found herself alone, puzzled by her solitary state. Outside, Eden expressed his gratitude to Anne for her patience during the earlier ordeal, acknowledging that their efforts had finally paid off. Anne admitted that she was feeling hungry, prompting Eden to propose that they quickly find something tasty to eat. Cut him off, steering the conversation toward the Red Hollow organization that had become the center of everyone's attention. Eden promised to explain the situation to her while they walked, making it clear that the matter was important to them because they were both alchemists. At the same time, sat alone in her office, working hard to believe she didn't feel sad or alone. She reminded herself that everyone else was simply caught up in their own tasks and tried to insist that being left by herself didn't affect her in the slightest. Her reflection was cut short when the phone began to ring, and she picked it up, introducing herself with the authority of Deputy Commander from the Archer Knights. After hearing the caller's words, she remained composed and assured him that she would arrive right away. Isabel came back and found herself amazed by how beautiful the city looked. Eden and Anne reached Square, and Isabel's eyes widened in amazement as she took in the unusual scenes surrounding them. The scene featured a vintage car capturing attention, while a bear handed out balloons to a young girl. Eden started to tell Anne that the Red Hollow group was viewed as a band of traitors, and had been officially labeled as an organization opposed to alchemists. He explained that, in reality, they were alchemists who supported freeing the ether. Without warning, a group emerged and brought up the concern that alchemists were risking their own lives to fuel their craft. They insisted that the ether should be shared among all alchemists, allowing everyone to practice alchemy freely. Eden explained that if such an event occurred, the floating city would surely fall, since its existence depended on the ether, and the consequences that would follow were beyond anyone's ability to predict. Observed the situation with a hint of sarcasm, noting that the issue at hand amounted to nothing more than infighting. She pointed out the group's arrogance and made sure to remind him that he had traveled a long way specifically to put an end to the problem. Isabel noticed an ice cream cart, and it immediately drew her interest. She turned to Eden and called out, inviting the yellow-haired companion to join her in getting one. Eden observed Isabel's fascination, and the sight brought back memories of earlier times for her. Just as Anne prepared to take a bite of her ice cream, another person accidentally collided with her, making the treat slip from her hand and drop onto the ground. The young man who had accidentally collided with her quickly offered his apology. He abruptly realized that the person before him was Eden. Eden heard his name spoken by a young man, and upon seeing him, realized it was Owen, the salamander alchemist. Owen's face lit up with joy as he shared how glad he was to see Eden and admitted he had been searching for him. Owen explained that he had only just gotten there, and he figured that wherever Eden showed up, Charlotte was sure to be nearby as well. At that instant, his gaze fell upon the ice cream that had tumbled onto the floor. He spoke to Anne with a harsh edge in his voice, insisting that the villain deserved death, and pressed her to authorize it. As Eden listened to Owen mention Charlotte, a sudden memory flashed through his mind. He recalled how intensely Charlotte had once liked him, a feeling that had always unsettled him. Charlotte suddenly materialized at his side. Her curiosity piqued as she tried to figure out who the woman standing with him might be. Eden realized that because of Charlotte, had accidentally lost her very first ice cream. Without warning, a new thought came to Eden's mind. He reached into his belongings and pulled out a tiny glass vial, uncorking it to let a blue, gooey creature named Baby Sticky ooze out. Upon spotting Baby Sticky, Charlotte let out a joyful scream, greeted the little one with warmth, and expressed her concern by wondering how it had been during their time apart. Eden explained to Charlotte that someone had assisted him on this occasion, and he acknowledged that the moment he would rely on her had finally arrived, just as she had anticipated. Charlotte reminded him that she had already warned him, insisting that if he had paid attention to her advice, he could have avoided all the trouble. Meanwhile, Eden reflected silently, realizing that Charlotte was just as unchanged as ever. At the same time, Owen came up with an idea to fix things by quickly finishing his ice cream. The object was purposefully released, allowing it to fall to the floor. Both of them would end up equally annoyed, which made the situation acceptable in Owen's mind. He prided himself on his cleverness, believing his plan would keep things calm for all involved. Meanwhile, Anne leaned over too and softly promised that she would let her land a single punch. Right after, struck Owen with such force that he collapsed to the floor, yelling out in agony. Owen questioned the situation in his mind, but quickly explained that he had acted foolishly, comparing him to a mischievous monkey who had gone too far. She made it clear that anyone who crossed such boundaries deserved a punch and warned him sternly not to speak badly about ice cream ever again. Charlotte agreed wholeheartedly, thinking to herself that Owen truly was acting foolish. However, she refused to believe that a foolish bear's strength depended solely on being near Eden. At that moment, her true identity became known to everyone. She was Charlotte, the Oracle Alchemist. Felt a jolt of shock when someone referred to her as a foolish bear. Charlotte remained adamant, finding it absurd that anyone she considered beneath her could exist, and she turned to Eden, seeking his agreement. Without warning, realization dawned on as she grasped what was happening. She reached out and took hold of Eden's hands. She firmly announced that she would never give up her valued subordinate to someone she considered an ill-mannered intruder. Charlotte felt a wave of astonishment as she tried to make sense of the strange phrases, yellow monkey and precious subordinate, that had just been mentioned. Charlotte seized Eden by the head, insisting she clarify the absurd falsehood that had just been revealed. In response, Eden admitted that the truth was rather complex, and let out a sigh, choosing not to pay attention to Charlotte, and then proposed to Eden that they should go get something to eat. Anne remarked with biting sarcasm on the foolishness of those surrounding Eden. Isabel shared Anne's opinion and then extended an invitation to Eden, referring to him mockingly as Yellow Monkey, to join them. Eden proposed that the group should leave together and promised to clarify things as they walked. He checked with Charlotte about whether she had already had lunch, and when she admitted she hadn't, she insisted there was much to discuss and demanded complete honesty from him. In the distance, Owen was sprawled across the floor, desperately pleading for the others to let him join them. Later, while sitting together in a restaurant, Charlotte expressed her frustration to Eden about the unfairness of him indulging in immature games while she was left out. Eden, however, dismissed her concerns, assuring her that there was no reason to envy something as trivial as a simple game. At that instant, as held Eden close, she found herself curious about the unusual exchange that had taken place between them during her time in the bathroom. Charlotte raised her voice, insisting that ought to appreciate Eden's generosity. However, dismissed the idea, claiming that she herself was the truly generous one. As the most senior member present, firmly announced her total opposition to Charlotte. Charlotte's disagreement quickly turned violent, with Charlotte demanding to know who truly was after hearing her harsh words. Meanwhile, stood her ground, firmly asserting that she was the older and more experienced one. Eden called out, urging the others to halt and look to Owen for assistance. Anne turned to Eden, questioning whether he thought the situation appeared peaceful. When Eden nodded in agreement, Anne insulted him by calling him a foolish monkey. Sometime afterward, Eden wondered aloud to Owen whether he had already been in this location for an entire week. Owen nodded in agreement, clarifying that his presence was due to evidence connecting the recent blast to the Red Hollow group. Charlotte then mentioned her decision to join the special investigation team, noting that Eden consistently takes the initiative during situations like these. She had expected Eden to join them too. As she reflected, she grumbled to herself about how Eden frequently got involved in affairs beyond his assigned duties, only showed up when the current case called for it, and otherwise vanished entirely unless his presence was absolutely necessary. Owen let out a deep sigh and remarked that Eden would no longer have his job if not for the wisdom and kindness of the sage, leaving Eden feeling as if he had just been struck by a crushing disappointment. Following the previous events, Owen proposed a light-hearted challenge to Eden, showing his belief that he would come out on top this round. Eden declined the request without hesitation, making it clear that there were more tasks to handle after their meal. At the same time, Charlotte's argument carried on, and Eden realized that staying with them any longer could lead to unpredictable consequences. Just as Eden and his companions prepared to depart, Owen inquired about their destination and wondered if he might join them. Anne responded to his request with icy indifference, turning him down without hesitation. Meanwhile, Eden attempted to persuade Owen by bringing up the possibility of dessert, which immediately lifted Owen's spirits. However, raised her voice, insisting that Owen was not allowed to join, and Anne firmly reiterated her denial. Anne began to argue, as Anne insisted that bears ought to be satisfied eating only meat. Quickly fired back, claiming that a healthy diet was necessary for someone to get taller, and then, with a hint of sarcasm, teased Anne by questioning if her jealousy stemmed from being more attractive. Owen's temper flared as he questioned why so many people admired someone like Eden, whom he considered useless, and he began to doubt whether everyone else could truly see Eden for who they were. Eden's frustration flared as he questioned Owen's reasons for mentioning the issue once more, reminding him that everything had already been resolved back in the forest. Isabel seized Eden by the neck, issuing a stern warning to the yellow monkey to never defy his mistress, Anne. Charlotte quickly stepped in and seized, raising her voice at the wild woman and demanding to know what gave her the right to intimidate Eden. Anne's temper flared as she firmly instructed Charlotte, the human, to keep her hands away from. Charlotte found herself caught in a heated argument with both Anne and Owen noticed the unfolding situation and found it intriguing, silently debating whether he ought to step in. The scene quickly descended into turmoil as the group erupted into a fierce and disorderly fight. In another part of the city, a pair of individuals sipped coffee as they gazed down at the bustling streets from a lofty vantage point. One of them admitted that he had never expected to sip coffee in such a remarkable spot, marveling at the breathtaking scenery before him. Meanwhile, the other confessed to feeling envious, longing to experience this beautiful view whenever he pleased. The first person in the group observed the main character's arrival and wondered aloud whether it was time to begin. The other person shook their head, thinking it was too soon and believing that fireworks reached their full beauty only when released after dark. That evening, he revealed that a magical fireworks display would light up the sky. At the restaurant, the group found themselves forced outside as the owner angrily ordered them to stay away for good. Made a vow to herself that she would never forget his actions. Once the conversation ended, the group continued on their way, each step shrouded in an uneasy quiet that no one dared to break. Owen let out a deep sigh, feeling overwhelmed by the tense mood in the room. He wished he could find something to do, but nothing seemed possible with the current atmosphere. More than anything, he just hoped the day would end quietly without any more trouble. Eden reached out and cupped Owen's face, firmly urging him to keep those words to himself. Charlotte declared her intention to lift her spirits by embarking on an intense shopping spree, an idea that caught Anne off guard. The group dove enthusiastically into another round of shopping, while Owen desperately attempted to intervene. He reminded them, his voice rising in frustration, that nearly the entire week had already been spent in stores, and joked that continuing any further might actually break the law. Isabel cut him off with a naive inquiry, wondering aloud whether shopping referred to a type of food. Charlotte's irritation grew, and she demanded that the joking stop, making it clear that her mood was already sour. Seeing Charlotte's surprise, Anne clarified that Isabel was actually telling the truth and confessed that she had never experienced shopping before. Charlotte discovered that this task was beyond her ability. Initially, Charlotte suspected that Isabel was merely pretending to appear miserable by resorting to a simple ruse. However, she quickly understood her mistake when she saw that Isabel's pure and honest expression simply could not be faked. At that moment, Charlotte made up her mind to lead Anne, and instructing them to come with her so she could reveal all the experiences they had yet to discover. Owen observed that their group now counted 3 members, a fact that Eden also quickly understood. Together, they silently agreed that Owen should command the knights to gather. Charlotte started the group's educational journey at a perfume store, informing them that perfume serves as a fashion accessory designed to make the body smell appealing. She demonstrated the usual method of putting on perfume, showing them how to spray it on their wrists and then softly press them together. She then applied a small amount behind her ears. The girls appeared delighted as they sampled various perfumes. Isabel showed interest in exploring more fragrances and considered whether she should select an international brand, and Charlotte picked out the scent she liked best. At the same time, Owen and Eden slumped in their seats, clearly worn out. Owen gazed around with a heavy heart, silently questioning whether they would be stuck in the shop, the 4th they had visited, for yet another hour. He couldn't shake the thought that their journey was far from over. Afterward, they headed over to a shop that sold clothes. Isabel admired a dress she noticed, appreciating its style, while Anne observed that although the design was lovely, it needed a brighter color to truly catch attention. Charlotte nodded in agreement, thinking to herself that bold colors indeed complemented well. Owen felt completely drained, his frustration erupting in a loud cry as he questioned how much longer this ordeal could possibly last. It dawned on him that with 3 people eager to browse, their trip would stretch on 3 times longer than if he were alone. As the evening sky darkened, Charlotte presented Isabelle with a present, mentioning she thought it would be perfect for her and hoping to hear what Isabelle thought. Inside was a hooded red cloak, which immediately delighted Isabelle. She admired it, noting how it reminded her of the teddy bear doll they had spotted before. Started searching with enthusiasm, hoping to find something that would be perfect for Anne. As the girls reveled in their outing, Eden and Owen trailed quietly in their wake, their arms weighed down with a pile of shopping bags. Without warning, Eden turned to Owen, questioning his lack of curiosity about Anne and. He wondered what their story might be, his curiosity quietly growing within him. Owen explained that he was unaware of any news about them, yet he figured Eden must have had a specific reason for keeping silent on the subject. The same circumstances also held true for Charlotte. Owen believed that Eden always acted with purpose, and although he sometimes sensed that things were unusual, he placed his full trust in Eden, confident that any explanations would come when the time was right. The girls suddenly spoke up, proposing that everyone should go out for parfaits, cutting the conversation short. Eden grew even more enthusiastic about the idea of going, his eagerness fueled by the thought of the special parfait that awaited him. Later on, a man shrouded in mystery remarked in a steady tone that the time had come to resume their duties. After hours spent browsing stores, the shopping trip eventually came to a close. The group sensed a newfound closeness among themselves. Charlotte turned to the others, wondering if they now appreciated the excitement of shopping. The girls responded eagerly, sharing how much they enjoyed it and voicing their wish to do it again and check out the shops they had missed. Later that evening, Anne turned to Charlotte and confidently claimed that she, not Eden, deserved the title of Ultimate Alchemist, while Eden bristled with irritation at her remark. Eden disagreed with what she said, insisting that keeping the promises would allow him to achieve the title of Ultimate Alchemist as well. Suddenly, a hidden voice interrupted, mocking him and questioning whether he truly believed he could reach that status himself. Without warning, someone shrouded in mystery materialized before Eden and pressed a hand against his chest, making it hard for Eden to breathe. The stranger reached for the tiny being perched atop Eden's head, mocking him by suggesting that even a wandering dog would find his statement ridiculous. The stranger warned Eden against becoming arrogant, announcing his intention to take Eden's partner for some time before springing away. Anne's eyes blazed with anger as she watched the man retreat, silently condemning him as a scoundrel in her mind. He informed of his intention to lead the way, and she promptly consented to accompany him. Eden attempted to shift his position, but found it challenging, leading him to suspect that alchemy might be the cause. Upon hearing that, Owen rested his hand on Eden's shoulder, signaling for him to stay put as he hurried off in pursuit of the kidnapper. Anne protested, firmly assuring that she intended to retrieve at the earliest opportunity. Eden attempted to prevent them from leaving and pleaded desperately for them to let him join them. At the same time, Charlotte hurried over to Eden, concern etched on her face, as she checked to see if he was all right. He examined him carefully to ensure there were no injuries. Suddenly, a terrifying blast erupted from behind them. A sudden shout shattered the scene as a person sprinted down the road, desperately yelling for assistance while a terrifying monster pursued them. A peculiar, small being suddenly emerged. Whenever anyone made contact with it, the creature would respond by saying hello, then promptly transform into a fiery orb and burst apart in a brilliant explosion. The blast sent out a powerful shockwave that left everyone around it momentarily dazed and unable to react. Eden remarked that they had at last shown themselves. Shortly afterward, countless explosive creatures began to emerge all over the city, sparking widespread terror as citizens screamed and rushed to escape. The group cautioned one another about the creatures, explaining that they would burst violently upon contact. A creature moved toward a young boy who was fleeing alongside his mother, preparing to detonate and harm him. Just in time, Eden stepped in, using the power to slow time and prevent disaster. A huge burst of purple light suddenly erupted close to where the boy and his mother stood. Eden called out to Charlotte, instructing her to prioritize saving others before anything else, and Charlotte quickly obeyed his command. Charlotte practiced alchemy by pouring a shimmering blue liquid onto the ground. In an instant, her creature Sticky appeared before her. Charlotte instructed Sticky to lead everyone to safety. The creature wasted no time, using its own body to form slides and secure paths, allowing civilians to escape safely. In the midst of the turmoil, Owen emerged, encircled by fiery creatures called the Salamander and the Half-Dragon, and declared his intention to handle everything from that point onward. Following that moment, Owen released a powerful burst of flames from his mouth, scorching everything in its path. He eliminated every creature that stood before him. From afar, Eden observed the unfolding events and experienced a wave of relief, realizing he had made it in time. Once Owen finished defeating the monsters, Charlotte mentioned how much time had passed since the three of them last teamed up. As she wrapped her arms around Eden, Eden silently questioned whether it had truly been so long. Owen shifted his gaze toward the distant skyline, noting that the situation was far from resolved. He pointed out that the creatures seemed to have emerged in more places than just here. In the midst of the city's turmoil, a woman clad in armor took charge, guiding people to safer, higher ground while making sure those who were hurt received help first. She called out to Alan, warning him to stay alert and cautious if he hoped to make it through safely. Alan let them know he was on his way without delay. Without warning, a tiny creature materialized before Alan. At the very last second, he shoved the woman out of his arms, making sure the blast struck only himself. Alan collapsed onto the ground, while his companion cried out his name in fear. In another part of the city, pressed on in her pursuit of the kidnapper, surprising him with her relentless determination, which far exceeded what he had expected. Feeling exhausted from constantly being on the run, the kidnapper concluded that the moment had come to vanish without a trace. Just as he was about to make his move, Isabel unexpectedly hurled her sword toward him and launched into an attack. She mocked him by questioning whether he had missed the command from her mistress to cease his actions. The kidnapper let out a weary sigh, coming to terms with the fact that anything connected to that man was bound to be unusual. He turned to the two girls and questioned whether they, too, practiced alchemy. Anne immediately dismissed the idea, firmly instructing him to end the foolishness and either surrender or go away. The kidnapper expressed regret before employing a move known as arrow lock, which confined within a glowing blue cube. Isaac disclosed that he was once known as the Alchemist of Air. He explained to the group that he could not endorse them for entry into the Red Hollow, making it clear that dying in this place would be the simplest outcome for them. After that, Isaac forcefully stamped his foot against the earth, propelling himself upward into the sky. He initiated an assault that he referred to as aerofractal. The earth suddenly broke apart under the girl's feet. Catching Isabel off guard, she noticed the ground twisting and cracking in an unexpected way. Requested that Anne stay where she was, assuring her that she would return as soon as she completed her task. She suddenly sprang forward and struck Isaac with a forceful kick, catching him off guard and leaving him unable to defend himself. Isaac could hardly believe how quickly moved, and before he could react, she launched another assault against him. Isabel activated one of her abilities, allowing her to close the distance to Isaac in an instant. Isaac became aware of the incoming threat and quickly surrounded himself with a protective barrier of energy. Without warning, emerged, breaking through the shield. She informed Isaac that if his end was near, he ought to face it with dignity. Without hesitation, she drove her weapon through Isaac's body. The sudden agony forced him to let out a piercing scream. Following that moment, Isaac unleashed the identical aerofractal assault, this time aiming it at who stood frozen in disbelief. The force of the attack struck with such intensity that she was thrown backward, prompting Anne to cry out's name in alarm. Isabel stood and coughed, then tried to comfort Anne by saying she was all right. She admitted she felt embarrassed to appear vulnerable, but promised she would handle the situation swiftly. Tossed a crimson rose upward, and as it soared, it morphed into an enormous sword, leaving Isaac completely amazed. When confronted by the blade, Isaac, wounded but determined, relied on a skill known as straightest gate. He formed a dense shield of air to surround his body, feeling sure of his strength. A confident smile appeared on his face as he believed that, no matter how dangerous might be, coming into contact with this intense wall of air would make her body burst apart instantly. Believing he had gained a brief advantage, he started weighing his options, uncertain if he should drag out the confrontation, bring it to a swift close, or just take the safest route by making his escape. As he became lost in thought, Isabel's pink sword slipped effortlessly through his barrier, stunning him and filling his mind with questions about the strange qualities of her weapon. Isabel stormed over to him, her anger clear in every step, demanding an explanation for his calm demeanor in her presence. Before had the chance to press on with her assault, Isaac employed the identical aerofractal method against her weapon, forcing her to release her grip on the sword. Refused to surrender. Drawing on all her physical power, she broke through the energy barrier encasing him, but the effort caused her own body to be destroyed. Glared at Isaac, mentally labeling him as filthy scum, while she questioned how he could have the audacity to intimidate Lady Anne. Isaac could hardly believe his eyes, as Isabel broke through the shield with remarkable ease. Isabel wasted no time, unleashing a swift and relentless barrage of punches and kicks at Isaac. In that moment, Isaac understood just how badly the situation could spiral out of control. Isabel relentlessly pressed her assault, showing no signs of mercy. She finished with a fierce kick that sent Isaac sprawling to the floor, declaring that he would pay for his actions, even in the afterlife. Without warning, Isaac erupted into desperate screams, pleading for his life and expressing a desperate desire to survive. He flashed a sly grin, exposing his deception, and mockingly questions belief that he would ever say such a thing.